Let's rank the top 10 players for the conference of the ACC in the 2026 season. We've already talked about the teams and what do we expect for them in 2026. We've talked about the quarterbacks and given them a full ranking. Let's go through the entire conference and find the best of the best regardless of the position. If you like this type of content, we've already posted the SEC. We plan to do the Big Ten, and we're going to be here for the entire college football season, 2 videos a week. So stick around. If you like college football, you're going to like this page. And there's no better way to kick off this ranking, then at number 10, I have Cooper Barkate, one of the most underrated players in the entire country. In 2026, when he was the #1 receiver for Duke with Darien Mensah, who we'll talk about a little bit later, he had 72 catches, about 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, about 15.6 yards per catch, and we also had a second-team All-ACC nomination. And this is a player that perfectly fits the mold of what you want from a complementary piece to Malachi Toney and overall the play style of a guy like Darien Mensah who loves to push the ball downfield. This is not your white wide receiver stereotype that plays in the slot and is a sneaky athlete. No, this is a bigger body wide receiver that can go catch with virtually anybody and has really good athleticism. But as well, when we're talking about route running, I think he's just as overall a very smooth wide receiver, and it would not shock me if he competes with Malachi Toney in just terms of production and is able to match him eye for eye on a week-to-week basis. Trust me, if you do not know about Cooper Barkate, you are missing out. The kid is an absolute stud. At number 9, though, I have one of the most explosive players in the entire country, point blank period, in Isaac Brown, the running back from Louisville. Now, personally, I think he's one of my favorite players in the entire country just because every single time he touches a football, it could be to the house. I'm not kidding when I say that. The explosion that we could see when he hits a hole is remarkable. What's holding me back from putting him higher on this list, though, is just truly he is limited in his touches because of his size. You're going to see him get about 15 to 18 touches per game, which is solid, but it's not a bell cow back that you can rely on for every single down. In his 2025 campaign, he had about 100 carries for 878 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 8.8 yards per carry. Let that sink in. 8.8 yards per carry. That's absolutely insane. Now, in 2025, you can make the argument that it was a dip in production because his true freshman season, he had over 1,100 yards and was winning a ton of accolades. Fully expect this upcoming season with a more dynamic quarterback for him to get a little bit more open in terms of getting more touches without having the entire attention of the defense. But I also find that hard to believe just because anytime he's on the football field, you know Louisville's going to try to get the ball into his hands because anytime it can turn into a touchdown. Number 8 on this list is a player that I frankly have underrated during the course of his career because I think he was a former 5-star that was a little bit overrated coming in Deuce Robinson, the former USC transfer, now entering his 2nd season at Florida State. And it's truly remarkable to not only get a first-team All-ACC nomination, a Biletnikoff semifinalist, getting over 1,000 yards in that Florida State offense and knowing how bad of a situation it was, that's remarkable in its own right. And I think it's crazy that he's still at Florida State. Now, Ashton Daniels is going to have a top receiver to go trust and push the ball down vertically because this is a huge receiver. I'm talking 6'6". We're talking Johnny Wilson types of metrics when we're looking at the body type of a receiver. But Deuce Robinson, I think, is a more fluid of an athlete. He's an incredible ball player. And I think in the scope of the wide receiver position for the entire country, I do think he gets a little bit undervalued just because of the situation at Florida State, which is not his fault. Go look at like Garrett Wilson for the New York Jets. He's an incredible ball player. He's just held back by his situation. That doesn't change the fact of how good of a ball player Deuce Robinson is, and I think this is a fair spot for him. At number 7, though, I have a returning interior defensive lineman that I don't know how doesn't get talked about more when we're looking at Ahmad Moten Sr. He was one of the stars of the defense that got to a national championship last year, and I fully expect a huge year for him entering his final season for the Miami Hurricanes. In 2025, he had 31 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and 27 pressures with a second-team All-ACC nomination for 2025. To be honest, this is a player that could have easily been drafted and be playing on Sundays for this upcoming season. I thought he was a solidified 2nd to 3rd round pick, but we could be seeing 1st round upside from Moten because he had an incredible playoff run. Yes, he was a little bit banged up throughout it, but when he was on the field, he was a true difference maker. Now, it's going to be a huge question mark of how much was he benefiting from having Mesidor? How much was he benefiting from having a guy like Ruben Bain on the outside? And is he going to be the top guy to lead that front seven, to really be the defensive lineman that offenses have to keep attention to. Now, there's some really good pieces around him. We've talked about Damon Wilson before, the Missouri transfer. How much can he replicate the production that was lost from that edge position? Because they work in tandem. They benefit from both of them. So can we see a dip in production from Moten, or is this going to be a huge step forward? This is a player that I think could be as high as a top 5 in the conference or fall out of this list. At number 6 is one of the most consistent players that does not get talked about enough. Maybe it's for the fact that SMU as a program just doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, I talked about Kevin Jennings before as one of the most underrated players, but he's not even the most underrated on his team. I don't know how many times I got to say the word underrated, but PJ Williams, the offensive tackle for SMU, has been the definition of consistency, starting all the way back for 2024 when they had joined the ACC. He had a phenomenal 2025, and his pass blocking has helped give a situation to the quarterback that we just talked about in Kevin Jennings to perform at a high level. The offense has not been the problem for SMU. It's been the defensive side of the ball. And I understand you could say that SMU as a program took a step back because they made a college football playoff run 2 years ago. They were in the ACC title race. But need I remind you, they were also in the conference title race this past season, and in huge part getting PJ Williams, who was a second-team All-ACC nomination. I think he'll be a first-teamer this upcoming season, unless we see like a crazy year from like Jackson Cantwell, which wouldn't shock me. But I think PJ Williams continuously gets undervalued by the college football public because he's been there for a while. We've seen it time and time again. And offensive linemen in general just don't get the respect that they deserve. And number 5 is my number 1 quarterback. Just spoil a previous video. Darien Mensah, the Duke transfer, now at Miami. His 2025 campaign was fantastic. About 66.8 completion percentage, about 4,000 yards. He was about 27 yards off, so 3.9K if you want. Then you have 34 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, second team All-ACC, and the ACC Newcomer of the Year because he had originally transferred from Tulane to Duke and now Duke to Miami. To me, this is a player that does everything really good. He pushes the ball well. He has good enough accuracy. He has good enough arm talent. He has a good enough mobility that keeps the defense honest. There's a lot of good here. Now, the question then becomes, when we look at the landscape of the quarterback position, I didn't really talk about this in too much detail in that video, is can we expect a JKS who, talent for talent, is more talented than a Darien Mensah, but the floor and what you could see on a day-to-day basis is not there yet, mainly for the fact that he's a true freshman, and this Mensah kid is a lot more of a veteran talent. So right now, I think Mensah is the best quarterback in this conference because he just does everything at a high level. And I think he right now is a better talent than what they had with Carson Beck. I could see him winning the Heisman. This is going to be a phenomenal year for him. And it's hard for me to see a world where Mensah isn't at the bare minimum with Shannon Dawson, who continuously maximizes the draft stock and maximizes the talent that's within that building. You saw Cam Ward's draft stock drastically jump up to number 1 overall. Carson Beck, I mean, for all intents and purposes, had barely any draft hype, and he still got drafted, I believe, in the 3rd round by the Cardinals. We have seen it time and time again with Shannon Dawson, their offensive coordinator, get the most out of these quarterbacks, and I expect the exact same with a guy like Darien Mensah. And at number 4 is a personal favorite of mine, because I think for the average college football fan, they're going to get a rude awakening into who Clev Lubin is, the defensive end for Louisville. In 2025, he had about 61 tackles, 13.5 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles, and a 3rd-team All-ACC selection. Now, you hear the 3rd team, and you're like, how is he a top 4 player in this conference? I think he's going to be a first-teamer this upcoming season, and I completely understand why he landed at 3rd team, mainly for the fact of just think about the talented edge players that were in that conference last year. We've already talked about Bain. We've already talked about Mesidor. That's the tip of the iceberg, and the fact that he was 3rd team, I actually think is a good thing because I think it's a sign of things to come as he enters his final year. He led Louisville in all of pressures with about 64 in 2025. And I truly believe when you turn on Louisville, and I've talked about it in the team rankings, I've talked about it in the quarterback rankings, all my chips are pushed in for Louisville. If there's a team that I think is going to knock off Miami, it's going to be the Louisville Cardinals. I think they're going to be incredibly good. And it's not just because I believe in the quarterback and Isaac Brown. The offense is not the question mark when we talk about this team. It's the defensive side of the ball. And I was told, go watch this Clev Lubin kid because the NFL draft community was becoming very fond of a player during the summer. And when you see that happening, it's usually because something's flashing off the screen. There's some hope and optimism that he can evolve into this top-end tier 1 edge rusher. And I saw it. I saw it immediately. This player is legit. He is going to be in that first round conversation. And I don't think it's ridiculous to have him top 4. This is a little bit of planting a seed and hoping it works out. I'm taking a shot and I'm hoping I make it. But at number 3 is the best linebacker in college football, Sammy Brown out of Clemson. You heard Dabo Swinney said it himself, that this is a roster of a bunch of nobodies. Nobody's a part of this roster. It's basically a high school team. We're going to be terrible. Don't listen to the head coach. I promise you, Dabo's not being sincere like it's Love Island. Like, he is not being honest with you right now. Sammy Brown is one of the key reasons why I believe Clemson is better than what people are actually anticipating. We've already talked about the receivers. My honorable mentions had a guy like Bryant Wesco, who's a phenomenal receiver. I just don't have enough time to talk about him. But Sammy Brown in 2025 had about 62 tackles, 13.5 tackles for a loss, 5 sacks, 1 interception. He was a first-team All-ACC nomination, and I expect him to get it once again, of course, barring injuries, but that goes with anybody on this list. And this is a player that has been the model of consistency ever since he arrived on campus. Former 5-star top 10 player nationally. He had a freshman of the year campaign, and then last year, everyone turned off the tape for Clemson. No one was watching that defense, but I was. I was taking the time to go watch it because I was seeing what can we see a little bit down the road. Peter Woods is gone. TJ Parker's gone. Avion Terrell's gone. Sammy Brown's still there. And anytime you try to run the football against that Clemson team, Sammy Brown was involved time and time again. And he's one of those linebackers that you could just fall in love with because he's not this skinny, light linebacker that gets pushed around, or he's like a safety hybrid like we're seeing time and time again. No, this is a linebacker that is playing true to the position and is a force every single time he steps into the box. And I can appreciate that, paired with the fact that he's a good athlete as well. This is the best linebacker in all of college football. And you could make a case that he should be either 2 or 1 on this list. And at number 2, I have Justice Haynes. I've seen him off of top 10 lists for the position of the running back. I think that's egregious. Now, like I said, you could put Sammy Brown in front of him if you want. If you have concerns about the injuries, go ahead, drop him off the list. But that better be the justification and not what you have seen him play at, especially last year, especially knowing the context of what that Michigan program was, especially on the offensive side of the ball. In 7 games, he had 121 carries, 857 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7.1 yards per carry. He was a Heisman contender, folks, at the running back position. And he goes to Georgia Tech, a running back school, a running back organization, a team that wants to focus on the run, and they're going to find any which way to get him the football. He's going to get a full workload. Now, if he gets banged up, it is what it is. But I want to live in a reality. I want to live in a world where we get a full season of Justice Haynes. And it could be a 1,500-yard season. It could be 2,000. That's how high I am on Justice Haynes. Now, was it a loss for Michigan? Absolutely, but they're going to be just fine. They have the best true freshman running back that we've seen in a long time, and Jordan Marshall is damn good. But I need to remind you of what a bad situation Michigan was, and he continuously won them football games. It wasn't Bryce Underwood. Damn sure wasn't that running or the wide receiver room. It was Justice Haynes winning them football games time and time again. And I'm going to put him this high. And call me crazy now, but I better hear an apology by the end of the season when I'm right. But number 1 needs no introduction. It's Malachi Toney. True freshman last year, broke onto the scene, was the best player of a team that went to a national championship. He had 109 receptions, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. He was 5th in the nation, led all ACC. He was a true freshman, first team all ACC, rookie of the year, everything baked into it. He's going to get better quarterback play. He is everything as advertised. A college football 27 cover athlete. I don't really need to explain much here. Malachi Toney is the best player in this conference. And frankly, I don't want to hear an argument for anybody else. But with that being in mind, thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this. If you got to this point in the video, you may have liked it just a little bit. There is a big red button that says the word subscribe. It would mean the world if you gave this channel a chance. We're posting 2 videos a week, every single week leading into the college football season. And any way you could show support is truly appreciated. But I'll get out of here. See you guys. Peace.